Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Good Deeds No Investing Podcast, Open Mic Night. I'm your co-host, Chris 70, here flying solo tonight. Gail Greenberg is feeling under the weather, so I am going to be running the show without Gail. So I'll apologize up front, for the lack of knowledge without Gail by my side tonight. So again, thank you all for joining us. And tonight, kind of going to have, again, open mic night. People can ask questions and so forth. If people are interested, I can also talk a little bit about partials. Can really show you some creative things if people are interested in that. But let's keep the questions flowing and through the people who are on tonight. And we've already got some questions that have come through the pipeline. So let's start with first one from Dean is, I want to know a little bit about non-performing mortgages and how do they work. So a reverse mortgage, I haven't played too much in that realm. And reverse mortgages, when they go non-performing, typically it's when the borrower is deceased. And in that instance, you're more than likely going to be foreclosing. Now, the interesting thing to look for on those assets when they are foreclosing is you have to make sure on a foreclosure you have an attorney that's familiar with them, because they do have to name the IRS as well as I think the state and several other entities as part of the foreclosure to make sure. I'm not familiar with enough about it, enough to know to get myself in trouble, that when I was doing some due diligence on some that were in foreclosure, I was advised that's something that definitely needed to be looked into. So hope that answered your question. There's not a lot of them out there, but the reality of it is you're not going to get the borrower typically on those reperforming. So your real exit strategy on those is to get the property. Roy, thank you for the one-stop webinar registration. Yes, so recently we switched, or I'm allowing the ability to allow people to register for till the rest of the year, and it all pops in your calendar. I had a lot of people ask about it, so that's something now when you go to register, you put in your information once and it should register you for all the webinars now till the rest of the year. I'm glad you enjoy that. I'm also still working on doing some text messaging to allow people reminders as well, but I haven't gotten there yet because it's been busy over the last month. Acquired a lot of assets over the last month to 6 weeks, so it's been a little crazy busy. And let's see, a new question just came through from John. What do you think, go over what steps you need to determine the asset's fair market value, and how do you establish a ballpark value you have confidence in? This, let's be honest, confidence is very difficult on pricing an asset, simply because you don't know what the inside looks like. Let's be honest, you're doing it based on the outside. Recently, I have changed up things a little bit in how I've done my BPOs. And what I meant by that is I've been having also a preservation company go out and do inspections. And I think I showed it recently in a webinar, kind of the inspection report they provide. But you can get a very detailed inspection report from the preservation company. The key is getting them out there in time, because typically it might take up to a week, and it really cuts it close with the closing period. But if you can get a preservation company out there in short money, between 25 and 50 bucks, instead of getting somebody like a WeGo Look, but WeGo Look's also a good company. You can get a preservation company out there, and they'll do a very detailed report. And if you want, people, feel free to shoot me an email. I can send you a copy of the report to show you what they provide. But they talk about if it's occupied, vacant, if the exterior is being kept, the lawn is mowed. They do a pretty thorough analysis, and it gets you a better condition of the property. Now, it doesn't give you the price for the property. They do put a ballpark estimate in there, but the reality of it is I wouldn't go by that. And from there, typically, I will do my own BPO, or if it's somewhere, I have an agent, what I'll do is I'll send them the photos and just have them run a CMA. And typically, they'll do that for nothing, because they don't have to really go out and do anything. And like anything, if they do that for me, usually now I can get them the listing if we ever take it back or whatever it may be. So John, shoot me an email, just a reminder, and I will gladly send you a sample of a report by a preservation company. But that's one way, because what I found is with some of the agents, and Gail really had, a challenge with this, is they don't get out of the car in many instances. And there was a major foundation crack on one of her properties that really caused some, damage to the property, and the property was nearly not worth what everyone thought it would be, because of, the person just, I guess, didn't get out of the car. So these people, get out of the car, they do, like I said, a pretty thorough report that I would be happy to share with you. So hope that answered that. Okay, question came through from Sylvia. Talk about what types of yields, ROIs are being accepted on bids, and what's realistic bidding. So, I would say, let's start with first, because I don't deal with seconds. So I'll start with, the first world. And on first, you've got notes and CFDs. And then you got the performing and non-performing. So let's break down first the performing aspect. So for performing notes and CFDs, if you're buying a one-off, meaning you're buying one asset, maybe two or three assets, typically on a note, you're going to see the yield somewhere probably between 10 and 13%. Some people will sell them down to 6 to 8%, but I would say you're looking at 10, 13%, and people say that's not that great of a yield. It's still double digits, and depending on the asset, if it's got a lot of security, behind it and stuff, it's a pretty safe risk. So that's one of the things that people forget to do, is they forget to measure the risk involved in the return. If you can get 10% with no risk or 12% with high risk, I take the 10% every day. That's a personal preference, but it's really, something to consider. For CFDs, you're typically going to be between 12 to 15% for performing, is where you'll see those from a yield perspective. Now, this is when you're buying, 1, 2, or 3s and so forth. I've recently bought several pools, and I was able to get them, at a steeper discount. So, and there's going to be opportunities where you can also get them at steeper discounts, but typically they're going to need a little bit of work. And what I mean by that is they might be missing an assignment, they might be missing a launch, they might have a satisfaction of mortgage that for some reason was not satisfied 15 years ago. So you may have to, chase some of that paperwork down. I'm seeing that more and more common with CFDs because when the paper was written, 10, 12 years ago or 8 years ago, it wasn't as clean. So you're going to see that a lot with CFDs. It doesn't mean that typically that it's fatal. It just means you need to understand what the ramifications are, because they're very different in every state. In regards to non-performing assets, it really is dependent upon the state, the risk, and everything involved. For me personally, I try and target between a 24 to 30% yield on non-performing assets, whether it's a note or a CFD. I don't think I've ever gone below 24%, and typically my numbers are usually based on 30%. And if I get it, great. If I don't, I don't. Now, the key is, when I'm talking about, yields versus ROIs, there is a difference. And the key is, again, garbage in and garbage out. What you put into your calculator is very important to make sure the information is accurate. I can take a note and probably show you anywhere from a 5% to a 95% return just by changing one number or changing a period of time. If you got a deal that's going to make, say you put $30,000 into a deal and you make $3,000, you make $5,000, $6,000, you make 20%. You make that 20% in 3 months, all of a sudden you just made 80% yield. essentially, if it takes you 3 years to get it, all of a sudden you just made about a 5% yield. So one of the things, not only about putting the numbers in and accuracy of like how much it costs to foreclose and other information, is the time period. And my note and bolt for the night is just right now. What I'll mention is not only is it the like I said, it's not only the numbers you put in but the time. But when you see things like the Fannie Mae foreclosure timelines, those are in the best case scenario, and that's assuming like the day something is available, your attorney can file it the next day and the court does everything lining up during that time, and it's not going to happen. So when you're starting to look at this stuff, if you have an attorney review the collateral, ask them, say, hey, can you spend 5 minutes walking me through the process? I have the Fannie Mae guidelines, right? Here's kind of the outline of how it goes in this state, and I kind of understand it, but realistically, what's it going to, if it's something uncontested, what's it going to take? Here it says 5 months. Is it really 6 months, 8 months? And that's me to get the deed, because you may foreclose, but it may take 4 months to get the deed from the judicial foreclosure. So that's another big component to look at as well. So, Sylvia, did that answer your question? So, good. So, partials. I'm going to talk about partials, and first I'll ask the people out there: do people understand what a partial is? Because I've seen people sell them in a variety of different ways. So I'm just curious if people understand, what a partial is from that standpoint. So what a partial essentially is you are buying or selling, I should say, a part of that note. So you're basically cutting it into a segment, a half, or whatever it is, and selling that off. Now, there's many different ways people do it, and I'm going to explain the way that I do it. It could be completely different than the way other people do it, but I'm going to tell you how my contracts for these are written and explain the process. So typically I will do it on a performing note with a very good history of performance, and property has a good amount of equity in the deal as well. So it's something that really provides a lot of protection from that standpoint. And with that protection, it kind of gives you a sense that the borrower will either stay in the property, or if they default, the more likely they probably end up filing bankruptcy than you getting that physical property back. Or if you do have to go to foreclosure, your costs that you put into it are covered. So that's kind of, three key things: is pay history, equity in the deal, and length of time that they've been paying. So those are kind of three things. So I'm actually going to share my screen, because I'm going to show you how goddamn powerful, excuse my French, I should edit that out. But this is, these can get very, very powerful. And let me just show you why. And let me say, people, if you could just put in, if you can see my screen in the chat, that would be awesome. And I'm trying to pull up my Zoom so I can actually see the chat. So give me 1 second, people. Yes, okay. So one of the things that I'll first start out with partials and say is, sometimes people, when you're new in this business, you want to get into the business, but you don't have the experience. How many people on here want to go out, raise some money, start buying some assets, but they also might not be comfortable because of the experience. So if that's the case, but you also want to make money. Okay, so how can I do that by also reducing the risk of my partner because of maybe a little bit of lack of experience? First, I'll always tell people I believe you should do this yourself. Meaning buy notes and understand the process before you ever raise money. But if you want to look at taking on some type of partner and try and do it in a approach that reduces risk, but also provides a valuable return to each other, partials actually can be extremely powerful. So what I have on the screen that y'all can see is, and I whited out the addresses and stuff. These are actually, I took 5 assets that I own right now. And I was going to send this to an individual tonight because they were looking to do some deals with some partials on people. And I've got 5 properties with values ranging between $35,000 and $65,000, and UPBs ranging anywhere from $13,000 to $30,000. So 5 assets with $114,000 UPB. They're all at a 10% rate, and I put in how much payments there are remaining, and these 5 assets are paying almost $1,500 per month. So it's a calculator I built that eventually, I'll be honest, I'll be sharing this at some point with people. I just haven't figured out how to, I'll say, what I should offer up on this one, seeing everyone just left great reviews. Thank you very much for everyone that left a review. And if you left a review on iTunes, it was for the bank assets where you can download all the data for the banks. So I think on this one, I'm going to do, if you leave us a review on YouTube, is probably what I'll end up doing with this one. But you can put in your servicing costs. Everything in blue is what you can edit. And this is where I want to show the power of a partial. So let's just take, this asset here. I'm trying to think which would be a good one. Let's just take this top one with the UPB of $21,000. Say you have somebody who is interested and has around $20,000 to invest, and they were looking for an 8% return. Okay, so can you make money on this deal? A lot of people look at it from a JV opportunity and be like, "There's no money in this deal. I can't make anything." But when you look at a $20,000 deal, and look at it from perspective of, okay, if we each made 12%, that's basically, call it $2,400. Now let's look at it from a perspective of a partial and the risk involved with the money you're going to make. So, and if I lose you on this, please ask questions. But we're just starting on line 8 here. So we've got a $60,000 property at $21,000 UPB. It's got 126 payments remaining. They're paying $275 a month. So if you bought this at a 13% yield, which I put right here, if I change that to 14, you notice you pay less. Let's just say you buy it at a 13% yield, okay? You were buying it for $17,500. Now, you've got a partial partner on here that when you sell off a partial, your goal is to cover what you bought plus some additional money in case the borrower stops paying or you have to go through some type of foreclosure. The way my partials work is if the borrower stops paying, I can stop payments during a period of time to go through a foreclosure process, but it's a moment of time that I either have to start paying again or basically pay off the partner their full amortization back. But the reality of it is, in most instances, if I have somebody that's $275, I'd probably just keep paying them, and this is why that buffer is important. Now, what is that buffer? Typically, I use 6 months of payments, which are, if you look at here, partial sale price, number of payments held, which is reserve. So it's 6 months of reserve. So actually, if we looked in this formula here, basically I'm taking 6 months of $275 plus this price, but I have a calculation in here so it can never be above the UPB. So if I went to 12 months, basically you get a bigger reserve. If I went to 20 months, 200 months, you'll notice it never goes above the UPB. But 6 months, and again, this is a loan that the borrower's been paying very well and consistent, that should be more than adequate. And again, you always want to look at what the value is as well. So you've got a partner who, on this asset, right now I put in, somebody's looking for 6%. Let's say they're looking for 8%, which is probably more in line. I mean, I've seen it up to 10%. So you're selling them 104 of 126 payments. So you're getting 22 payments at the end, plus you're getting the bump at the front. So, you are deferring payments, but when you look at it, now let's go back to what I said earlier. On a $20,000 investment, okay, on a non-performing note, if you made 12%, you're making 2,400. Does that make sense, everybody? On this performing note with a partial, you're making $1,650 right off the bat. So you're losing $800, in essence. But think of the risk and think of the amount of time you have to spend on a performing note versus a non-performing note. To me, $800 over, call it a year's time is definitely worth it. But here's the other kicker to it. In, basically 9 years from now, you're also getting another $5,000 of revenue stream. So somebody like me who's in, my mid 40s, when I look at this, I can wait 10 years and start getting this payment again, So you're looking at it of you get a bump now and you get a bump in 10 years. Now people will say, well, what happens if they pay off the loan early? Well, you basically run the partial price off of an amortization table. And based on that, you are, whatever in month 12 it pays off, you pay them whatever off that delta is. Now what happens is you still end up getting your initial acquisition number, but your revenue stream isn't, 10 years down the line, it's less, but it's still something that is paid off at that time. Does that make sense to people? I'm just curious. I mean, if people are following this, because people talk about partials, and I wanted to show this example because it's unbelievable how powerful these are. And the other side is the risk mitigation side, especially for people who are newer to this business, because you learn, again, you may have bought a note or two and so forth, but again, you're understanding still the servicing side and understanding and building the relationship with the servicers. You're building the relationship with your collateral review companies. Typically you're probably not going to need an attorney, but if you do, you can always reach out, but you're getting that component out of it. And really, you're going off of a payment stream. So I was talking to an investor today, actually, that has somebody that they basically think, know they can get, between 6 and 8%. And I said, let me just send you an example of 5 loans I have. And I just pulled the first 5 loans out of the list I have that, that I own. And, basically it was like, okay, if I sold these to him at 13%, he's paying $93,000. He's making $10,000 right off the bat. So he's putting $10,000 into his pocket based on his reserve. Plus he's getting another payment stream down the line of, $29,000, which again, it's down the road, but what's wrong with building money down the road that you don't have to pay taxes on now? All that revenue stream down the line, he's not paying taxes on that now. So if it's something that you're looking for in your retirement, if you're going to retire in 10 years, you can start stacking all this money 10 years from now, where you basically this interest that is building up on this amortization, which is really where that money's coming from, is basically, it's literally growing tax-free because the borrower's loan, is basically getting paid down, but the money that they're going to owe you is there that it's tax-free. So really, partials do rock. I think people just need to understand them, and I'm hoping showing this lets people get a better understanding, because again, when you look at this, so again, you're looking at $94,000, okay, and you're hoping to make 12% on that deal. Hold on, let me just do the math. 94,094. Your goal at the end of the day would be to make $11,280. And right here, you're already making $8,800. You're this far from what you're going to make on a non-performer. What if somebody said, okay, and I said, okay, you know what, you're buying all these, I'll give it to you at 14%. Okay. So basically, their acquisition price just went down, and their partial price also did go down. Let me check on that. Because of the reserve price. But say, you bought it at 14% yield, but you wanted to go to a 10-month reserve. you're still getting, at the end of the day, a revenue stream of 25,000, but you're getting 15,000 up front. So you're getting 16% right off the top. You know, say you want to hold it 8 months. There's your 10%, basically 12% return versus dealing with non-performing notes. So does this enlighten people at all? I'm just curious if people, now I showed this to a good friend of mine who is like, the guy's a genius. Went to college with him. He's a chemical engineer, and he's extremely bright. And just showing him, this model, and he's sitting there. He goes, "You can't do this." I'm like, "Wait a minute, I can't do this." He goes, "How?" Because people just can't grasp this, that you're basically making money and arbitraging it, and taking, basically buying something. You're buying low and selling high in essence. Now, here's one of the key things that I want to make sure I reiterate is, with this initial acquisition money, don't go out and go on a nice vacation with it if this is the only money you have. If one of these goes non-performing, hold the money. If 5 of them go non-performing, then you bought 5 crappy performing assets. What are the chances? You're probably going to have 1 in 5 that could. And what's it going to cost you? Maybe it'll cost you 3,000 to 4,000. Now, another thing, if you do this once or twice, or 2, 3 times, especially if you bought like 5, 6, 7, 8 assets, you've got this money, $12,000 sitting in a pool. Say this was 20,000. Well, guess what? You can take that $20,000 now, go buy yourself a performing note that might be paying you $400 a month. And guess what? If one of these stops paying, you've already got something that backs it up with your other note. So, that's kind of your reserve. And you can build that, because now instead of keeping $20,000 in the bank, you just bought your own self a performing note at 10 to 12%. That, again, maybe should have a lot of equity in it and is providing cash flow to you. So you literally just took somebody's money that gave you, you're paying them, a nice return that they're happy with. You've taken their money and basically to pay for these assets and taken the leftover to invest it in yourself. Now all of a sudden you got your own note, as well as these other partials. So, again, it's, a few things to look for. And that's why and here's the other selling point to somebody on these, and that's why I put this loan to value on here. This one right here, that one's a little high, 67%. I typically target on everything here under 50%. So, if you target under 50% on loan to value as well, that's just another selling point on this. So, Eric said, I'm not quite clear if the loan is paid off, or if someone buys 60 months of payment and the loan pays off at, say, 24th month, then the investor would be paid what? So hold on one second. Let me show you that. Give you a great example of that. Okay, can you see this loan calculator I just popped up? It says Exhibit B, loan amortization schedule. Okay. Okay, so we just sold. Okay, I'm going to take that loan we just had, okay? Which was, we're selling it to him for $18,988.68. Okay, we're selling it to him at 8%. Okay, and we're paying him monthly payments of $255. Because what I do is I take the principal and interest and I subtract the servicing cost. So we are selling him 103 months, which when we get back to the next page, you'll see is 103 months. So on this schedule, here's his beginning balance. So at month 24, you cut him a check for $15,808. Okay. Now, So that's what you would cut him his check for. And this is in the contract. So if on, the start date on this, let's say it was 10/1/19. So on 9/1/21, or whatever period this gets paid off, this is what they're owed. So let's just take that number, the 15,808.24, okay, and write that down. So the UPB on the actual loan is 21,380.04, and it's at 10%, okay? And the payment is 275, okay, because that's their payment, but I took out the servicing, which is 126 months, which you'll see on the next one. On month 24, if they paid it off, there's 18,936. So if I take that number and do the delta, when this gets paid off, you're getting 18,936. You're paying this partner 15,800. You just made an extra $3,000. You follow that? So it paid off instead of, and I'll go back to the other one. Remember that 126 and 103 months. Now you just made, instead of getting a revenue stream of $5,800, you still get your $2,200 up front, plus you're getting $3,100. So you're making $5,300 in 2-year time period. On an asset, technically you paid $16,788 for, that you got paid off. And if you do the math, that's a 31% return, and say it's over 2 years, so it's a 15% return on a partial, on a performing asset, when people target 15% on a non-performing asset. See what I'm trying to get at? There's many different ways, if you can get creative, on how to do this. And like I said, sometimes a person, might want 10%. Even if they want 10%, you're still doing very well. Even if you bought it at 12 and 10, you basically, and put a 6-month buffer on it, you're still making $1,650 off the bat. And actually that has a negative pay stream. So that's what you gotta be careful of. If you did it a 4-month buffer, you're making $1,100, and then you only get the last 6 payments. Now there's other things you could do as well, which is change your monthly payment, make their monthly payment lower so you have cash flow during this thing. So, say I was buying it at 14 and giving them 9. Instead of giving them $255 a month, say I was giving them $200 a month. You couldn't do that because the payments remaining go negative. If you did 225, an example, you'd almost wipe out all the payments, but you're also getting a payment stream after servicing of $30 a month. So not a lot, $30 a month, but when you think about it, if you did this on 3 loans, that's $100 per month. And again, you're never going to get rich off of one deal. I just want to say that again, you're not going to get rich off of one deal. It's all about building increments and increments, okay? If you do this one, let's look at this again. You do this the first time, you made $1,100 plus a payment stream of, I'm putting all these at 9%. Again, I would never go more than 10% because the level of risk is so low. First time you do it, you make $1,100 off the bat, you keep that in reserves, and then you're building over 2 years of payments of $250. Do it the next time, again, another $1,000, plus you got 38 payments of $284. Do it again, you made just a little under $1,000. If you do this every single asset, you make $1,000. Nothing wrong with that, because you do it 10 times, there's 10 grand. Plus, again, you're building that revenue stream for the future. Now, if you're 65 years old, partials, depending on certain aspects of when you're looking for the funds and so forth, you may not want to wait 20 years. My grandmother's 99, so if she would have done this when she was 65, she wouldn't care. She's going to be 100 in March. But it's something that, people, if they're looking for, what I meant by that is if you're at a retirement age and you're looking to supplement your income now, partials, the way you might want to look at this is by doing arbitraging the interest rate, but not giving them as much money. So you're basically balancing out, so they get a portion of every remaining payment is how that would work. So you might get $50 per every payment or $100 per every payment, but then the loan, if there's 100 months left, you're giving them 100 months of just a reduced number. And that way you're getting the cash flow coming in the door now, or you can look at it later. So that makes sense for people? Let's see, an extra 3K all day, gracias. Yes, very exciting. Yeah, and and again, it depends on who you know and where you're located, because a lot of people look at it of if I can get 6-8%, they're excited. Most note investors, they'll look at you and say, "You give me 6%, go pound sand." The biggest thing I want to mention to people is, and I'm going to switch the screen again and go back over to that other share because I just want people to be completely aware of this. Most investors, when they think of investing in a CD or in an asset, they put in $20,000 and that is growing. The $20,000 is growing, okay? And you are giving them principal. So let's take this asset, and I'm going to put these numbers back in. And if we're selling it to them for $1788.68, we're paying them $255 a month at, I'm going to say 9%, okay? So we got 100 months on this, and they're getting a payment of $255. Now that payment is principal and interest. So over the 8 years that this, when people think of this in a CD, I'm putting something in a CD for 8 years at a certain interest rate, that $18,000 every year is growing at that rate. On a partial, that's not the case. And the reason why is because if you put $18,000 in the bank, and we're just going to use this 0.9%, okay, match, this payment of $255, basically they'd be getting $135 a month. You're giving them an extra $120 because you're paying down that principal. So the cumulative interest during this time is $7,600. Now, if this was interest only, basically they would be getting 135 times 100 would be about $6,000 more. And people are like, well, I'm losing out. My return really isn't 9%. Yes, it is, because you're getting your principal back. So after the first year, your $18,000, I'm only paying interest now. It's just like a car loan or your mortgage. You're getting more money, back. So it reduces their risk, but also is just lowering their balance, because eventually, instead of giving them a lump sum at the end, you're paying it down periodically per month. That is the way I recommend you do it, because when you try and get into interest only, you're paying them the interest, but the principal you're keeping and you're kind of stowing it away. And if you're getting $120 a month in principal, what can you do with it? Nothing. So you're paying somebody 9% on that principal that's just sitting there doing nothing for you. So give it back to them. And that way they're getting paid back faster, so they get their investment back faster. When you look at it, that's $18,000 investment divided by 255. After 70 months, everything beyond that is gravy for them. So that's the other thing that really confuses people on partials, is that component of them not understanding that it's principal and interest. And it's really just a loan, again, like some people say it's hypothecation. It somewhat is, in a sense, because you're hypothecating it where you're getting a loan from somebody to pay, basically to buy this note that somebody else is paying. So in essence, you are hypothecating it, and so forth. And a few things that I'll comment on as well is, if there's legal fees, I pay them. If there's other fees or costs on something, I pay them. So this person, when they invest, they basically are getting that. There's no deduction from any of their payments or anything. That's what I'm giving them. And that's what, so there's things you account for. And that's why, again, I always recommend that you keep, go back to the screen, you go back to that buffer and just have some reserves and, go from there. But for people who are newer to note investing and trying to, get, their feet wet and really learn a lot of the ins and outs of the business with taking on some reduced risk, and you have some people who have, money that but you might be nervous, taking it from them because you haven't done enough deals and so forth. This is where I would tell you to start. Again, a lot of people will look at this and be like, I can't JV on a performing note that I'm buying at 14%. No, you don't JV on it. You sell them a partial. So, and you give them, a percent. And people say, well, I wanted 10 or 12%. Well, again, it's all about the risk. Why would I give somebody 12% return on a asset that has a 30% loan to value? And oh, by the way, you're the first one in. So they're literally like, when you look at this first position lien that you acquired, you're basically breaking into a 1A and a 1B, and they're in position 1A. So the way my contracts are written is, if I have to go after legal and I go foreclose, and say the UPB is 21,000, say this thing goes and forecloses and sells for 18,000, which is their price, they get all their money before I do. So just another comment on that. Patty, would I be able to share this calculator? Patty, if you're nice to me, how's that? I will share this calculator. Both of these I will share with people. And again, Patty, if you joined us a little late, I was trying to figure out a way to barter it for people. And my thought process is possibly leaving us a review on YouTube, or I'll come up with something. But again, as most of you know, I give stuff away for free. I do not charge people for it. This is stuff that I think is powerful and helpful for people. I do want to just run, another quick check through some of these partial calculators, make sure there's nothing, incorrect in it. But I quickly ran some things and it has checked out. But, these can be, extremely powerful tools for people on the partial side. So people have questions about partials. Was this helpful? Is this beneficial? Love to get some thoughts, opinions from people. What do you think? Clean out I apologize for all the clicking. It drives me nuts, but I'm just closing out all the questions. So very helpful, very helpful. Absolutely love this. So, this is something where also I heard people post on Facebook, what are some things that people have? And people say, hey, I'm having trouble finding deals. And, that's one thing that, it can be challenging and so forth. And there's a lot of people that, Patty, who's on here, Patty's done, many, many deals. And, she may have some people sitting on the sidelines that, have this money. It's like, what should I do with it and stuff? And Patty's like, I can't find any deals. I can't find any deals. And Patty, I'm just using your example. I'm not saying you can't find deals. I know you can. But it's, as you get experience and so forth, like Patty has, all of a sudden it's like, hey, look, oh, wait a second. Somebody's got these 10 performing assets that, wait a second, I can buy these and buy them at this price, and this person's looking for this type of return. Again, I can arbitrage this, all day long. But I just, again, always go back to reiterating the fact that you want to make sure there's equity, and you want to make sure you have your own money set aside in case, an asset does go non-performing, because you want to make sure, that happens. So you can continue basically making sure that individual kind of keeps their payment stream. For me, with the parcels I've had, if I had my contracts is one thing, but if somebody, so far to date, if a borrower's missed a payment, I've still paid the partner because if it's a $300 payment or something, I don't feel like getting a phone call saying, hey, I didn't see anything this month. It's, the payment goes through. So, and you're right, this Patty mentioned, it's, creative field, but it's also very fluid and diverse because things comes in waves. They really, you'll have, this summer, how many of us out there, honestly, raise your hand, how many out this summer, we're out there twiddling our thumbs this summer, trying to find assets that were very difficult. And then all of a sudden, Labor Day hits, and all of a sudden it's like, a massive influx that I've seen recently of assets come through. And, you're going to see that now. And then what's going to happen is in October, you're probably going to see a little bit of squeeze or slowdown. November is going to be busy as hell. And then, end of November, December, you're going to see sporadic stuff. And a lot of stuff you see at the end of the year recently has been kind of stuff that you've already seen maybe 1, 2, 10 times that you didn't buy it the first 9 times. So you're probably not going to buy it the 10th time. So question came through, am I keeping the note in your name when they sell partial and servicing your company? So for me, yes, I do. So the way I do it, Kent, and I'm just going to use you because you asked a question, but say you did a partial with me. You'd have an agreement that it's one agreement that is it's a partial asset purchase and a collateral assignment. It's all one thing that says Ken is buying 100 payments at $255 a month, and the exhibit B, this is exhibit that I had on that amortization table, that's attached. You have that agreement, and basically the servicing stays in my name. So and I don't split the payments with the servicer because, as many of us know, servicers have sometimes enough trouble paying one person. So basically what happens is, basically, the service pays me, I pay you. And, I'll say off the record, I just set it for within my bank account that the check goes out. I set a year of payments in advance to the partner that the check goes out the same day every month. And if the borrower's early or late, in most of the cases they're usually right on time, but sometimes it might be a day or two late. I'm not waiting for that payment to come in because, again, for me to go check if the payments come in and to chase down when I put it in the system, for me it's easier to just send you your payment by the first of every month. And that's why, again, with this buffer reserve you have, if a payment's missed, it's almost like you had the partner or the partial buyer prepay you any delinquency. That's another way to look at it. And somebody mentioned is, this person's giving me an extra $1,100. They just gave me 4 months of delinquency payments that if they miss a payment, guess what? I'm pulling from that reserve and handing it to that person. So, Dan, I know you do the same thing, and you've been rocking it as well with some of these things as well. So Christina said, if you're arbitraging this by using partial strategy, does this mean you're still shopping for yield? Yes, I am still shopping for yield because what I'm trying to do is buy it at the best yield I can, and also sell the partial at the lowest yield that I can get somebody on. So, on this one that's on the screen now, we're at a 14.9 yield, and this at the end of the day gives 7,700 in profit over over a lengthy period of time. All of a sudden, let's say if I was buying it at 15 and brought this down to 7.5. Now all of a sudden, again, my acquisition is really a set number by how many months of reserve I hold. But all of a sudden now I'm up to 10,700. Now I could change this to, because of that, I could change this to 8. My overall profit goes down, but my yield is probably higher because I'm getting more money up front. But, basically, again, you want to buy low, sell high. That's, the name of the game in this or in any business. But with this, again, you look at this aspect and, 15 and not 8, is probably, you're not going to get that a lot, but let's say, you can, let's say, comfortably buy 13 and 8. You should be able to buy, a note, or even a CFD. CFDs are great for this too, by the way, because, with the CFD, if you're in a, again, the forfeiture process, usually much quicker than the foreclosure process. So, CFDs, I've done these with CFDs as well in Indiana and certain states because, if they stop paying, hey, they're done in 3-4 months. So if you did a 13 and 8, again, you're making $2,200 up front on a $17,000 acquisition. You do that math, that's 13% right back to you that you're getting. And what are you targeting on JV deal? 12 to 15%. You made the same amount of money essentially right off the bat, but you're paying yourself day one. you're paying yourself, but you should keep it in reserves again. But that money, is being made at a loan to value to the partner of 33% and an overall loan to value from the UPB versus value of, again, or what you paid, again, 30 something percent. So. Do you mind telling us who your mentor for partials is? I only know one person that teaches it. Georgetown University is where I learned a component to this because I'm getting a master's in real estate finance there. And one of my professors who was in this, we were doing, people are going to fall asleep now, I apologize. So we were doing what's called bifurcation of a yield, which is we're doing a case study on an apartment building, a office building, and determining whether the yield was better to hold the asset for a longer period of time or sell it. And we're determining where the money was being made, because in a lot of commercial deals, you don't make a lot off the cash flow, but you may end up getting a little bit, but it bumps up the cap rate. So you can make a lot of money at the sale. Other instances, you might be making a lot off the cash flow, but not much off the sale. So you want to know, when am I making my money? Am I making on the cash flow or am I making on the sale? And that kind of got my head spinning. And I was looking at looking at the notes and saying, okay, where do you make your money on even non-performers that turn performers? And from there, it kind of rolled into, when I was looking at some of these things, just gave me a lot of the ideas with partials. So basically, I'd say pretty much I'm self-taught. I'm a numbers, I deal with math and crazy spreadsheets all day long. So in situations like this and debt stacking of commercial deals where, okay, if we're putting in 10% equity, do we want a 20% equity partner and 70% financing, 40% equity and 50% financing? Like, what is that magic numbers? So with partials, it really was just, pretty simple for me of getting creative in this sense. So hope that answered your question. But yes, I know Eddie Speed teaches it. And I've heard very good things about Eddie's training on partials. I haven't taken it, so I really can't give any feedback or opinion. But I know Eddie, does teach partials, and I joked when I saw one of his things on a webinar that he gets all his money, or he sells them all at like 5 and 6%. And I said, can I just not pay for the training and just pay for your list of people who you get your supply from if you're flipping these at 5 to 6%? So Eric asks, how many years do you typically sell to investors? Minimum 3. It really depends on the note and the asset and how long they want their money tied up. For you, what you want to do is try and time it so they pay for the whole price of the asset. So this first one I'm talking about, there's 126 payments left. It's not worth selling them 36 payments, because if you sold them 36 payments, they're basically giving you, probably, I don't have that in this calculation, but they're really not giving you a good amount of payment stream. So you're probably getting, actually, hold on, I bet you're probably getting about $7,500. Yeah, 33 months. So, you're paying $17,000, $7,500, is it really worth it? Now, if, you're basically using your own IRA, you can use these with your IRA, I believe, where, say you have 10,000 in your IRA and say, okay, I want this one. I'm going to, I need 9,000 from somebody. So I'm going to sell him $9,000. So he gets 40 months, and then my IRA gets the next 86 months. So you can do it that way yourself. But yeah, typically these, again, I wouldn't go less than 3. What your goal is to try and sell it for the purchase price. And a lot of times the people who invest in these are using IRA money. They're not using their cash, and they're looking for that long-term growth of keeping something in a safe, secure asset for 5, 10 years. Christina, if I'm doing this myself, what's the difference in yield I would get in comparison to what my investor would get, or is it the same? It depends. again, it really depends on, the yield to your investor on these is what you agree to. They get no upside. If this loan gets paid off in month 24, I did an example earlier that I missed. You can go back and watch it. If this gets paid off in month 24, you don't, you don't get, any, they don't get the added benefit. You do. So, that's a component. So let me just, a greater example to that is, let's say you were able to pick something up at like 18%. Okay. So, you're paying 14,000 for this. You're basically, because of 8 months reserves, giving them 16,000. But, if this thing got paid off early, in month 24, this loan had a balance of $18,000 left, roughly, on it. Whereas this partials in month 24 would have probably a balance of like 13,000. So you would make $5,000 split, which on a JV, you split the profits. On a partial, no. They get paid off what's left on the amortization schedule. So that's another big thing to note as well, that it's, their risk is minimized, their upside is capped. Because you're basically, it's really just a loan. Think of it as a car loan. Think of it as a car loan that, hey, look, I've got this loan, I need to pay. And basically, if you get the money from somewhere, the borrower, to pay it off early, you pay them what's left on the amortization schedule. But because you're buying it at a discount, and the UPB on the loan is higher than the UPB of your partner, you get that delta. Yes, Quincy does teach a lot about this as well. You are correct. He's done a lot of good things about this on podcasts and webinars and stuff that I've seen as well. So, what other questions can I answer about partials? Hope this was helpful for you, and so forth, and so on. So, be happy to. So we're coming up on an hour now. So yes, Christina, you are definitely getting the benefit of the back end. Christine, if you want to shoot me an email, I'll gladly do a one-on-one with you. Spend 15 minutes and answer any questions you have as well on this. So just to make sure you thoroughly understand it, because I know you weren't here for the beginning. And it goes out to anybody who's here tonight or listening to this podcast. If you want a quick 15 minutes one-on-one where I can explain this to you more thoroughly in detail, please let me know. I'm hoping now I don't have 50 people all fill my email box tonight. But if you do, just remember that I work a full-time job as well and have a family and kids. So I might say, hey, look, it's not going to be till 2 Sundays from now that I can sit down with you and spend 15 minutes with you. Unless you like to do it like 7:30 in the morning Eastern, and I can, if you can get me early in the morning, that's the best time to get me. But yes, you are getting the benefit of the back end on this. And that's one of the key things. And for me, the way I started was I was doing JV deals with unperforming notes. But what I was doing was I was really taking an upfront fee to manage it, and then giving the partner a, basically essentially a preferred return. And then if it paid off early, we would split some of those profits. And, I'd say after a while, I realized, well, wait a second, they've got no risk in this. They're getting all the cash flow. I'm just managing it. Why am I giving away that upside? And, I made a business decision to say, look, I'm not going to do that anymore. And I'll do it as a partial. So I, took their upside. Honestly, I was giving away too much. I mean, that's the reality of it. And sometimes you may do that when you get started because you're just trying to grow your business, and it's not a bad thing by any shape. I mean, it's done very well for me because of the people who I've worked with. They've invested with me again, so I'm not complaining by any means. But I learned that I'm like, wait a second, over time, I can do this as a partial versus a JV split 50-50, profit type thing, or a preferred return plus. And, I get that, I get 100% of that added benefit, but you are taking on the risk if it defaults. So that's the other thing I want to make sure, because you weren't on earlier, is I am taking on that risk. Donna Bauer also on partials. Yeah, I haven't seen Donna's training. I've heard, again, good things about that as well. Dean, can we get a copy of your partial calculator spreadsheet? Yes, I am going to get this out to people. I'm just, like I mentioned a few times earlier, thinking of the best way to, quote unquote, bribe you guys to promote us in some way, shape, or form. Because as many of you know, stuff like this I give out. We do not, take, I'll say, donations for them. So. Christina, thank you. Yes, feel free to email me. Falana, you're welcome. Glad you enjoyed. Let's see. I know, one last thing before we head out. If there's anyone else that does this, just curious if you do it differently, or how that, how you do it differently. If there's other ways, again, I do it my way, but there's 1,000 ways you can do partials. I'm just curious. While we wait for that question to come in, Christina, great question about taxes and how income from partials is taxed on an investor. This was a little educational for me. So the way it's taxed is it's taxed as if it's two different loans. So on your profit and loss statement, so you will have the interest from the borrower come in as a credit, and the interest you pay that person will be a debit. So in essence, if you got a $200, so say the payments are basically going to be the same, essentially the same outside of servicing. You got $255 coming in and you got $255 going out, but the $255 coming in will have higher interest than the $255 portion that goes out. It's very minimal. It might be $10 or $20, whatever that number is, but you are getting more interest. So on your profit and loss statement, you are going to be shown that you've made money, even though technically you haven't. But this $2,200 buffer, I keep that on my balance sheet side. I don't take that as profit. So because I keep that there in case of reserves and so forth. So you do, on your profit and loss, the interest that comes in from the borrower goes on that statement, and the interest that you pay somebody does go on the profit and loss as well. If you do this and you have a bookkeeper and you do JVs, and I'm glad you brought this up, Christina, because it's an awesome, very important point. I use Debbie Mullins, and if you do partials, I said to Debbie, hey, this is what I'm doing, and you have to explain it to them, because typically what they'll do is they'll just put it in as a 50-50 JV. You explain this to them that you did the partial, that way they know how to allocate that principal and interest and know what the JV deal is, that it is a partial and it's not a 50-50 split. Great question. And I'm glad you asked that, because I would have forgotten to touch base on that. So, one thing, and again, you will pay, but if you're getting, if the interest is, $240 a year and you're in the 28% bracket, you paid $67 in taxes, that money technically you don't have, but down the road, as this starts to, get paid down and so forth, technically I think you prepaid some of that already. So, but yeah, there is that component that you would have to pay some of the taxes. Good. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Helpful. Great stuff. Anything else we can cover tonight? We've been at it for just over an hour. I was going to wrap up for those who couldn't join us. Unfortunately, Gail is feeling under the weather. So if you can send her an email wishing her well, be greatly appreciated, and how much you missed her, and how I couldn't handle myself for the evening, because we always joke that if she's not on, then it's going to be a horrible episode. Well, So, well, I think that covers everything for this evening. So I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening on the Good Deeds Note Investing podcast. For those of you who have not already, I know most of you have, left us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or any of the podcast sites, we would greatly appreciate it. If you do leave us a review there, we will send you the program on how you can download all the bank data for free. So want to just make that out there. And also for those who are on Facebook, make sure to join the Notes and Bolts from the Good Deeds Note Investing Podcast Facebook group. We are right at the point of hitting about 600 members in our group, so we're very excited about that. But we do share a lot of valuable information on there, whether it's contacts, attorneys, realtors, property managers, and information like these spreadsheets and other things that we provide. A lot of that stuff we'll post it on Facebook so people can download it. So for those of you who are on Facebook, make sure to join. And that's all we have for tonight. That's good. Oh, one last question. John, for the program, do you want to review on any particular platform? John, I don't care. iTunes, Stitcher, whatever it is. You do it, either send me an email with it or post it on the Facebook group, and I will get that out to you. And and there are instructions with it, and I'm not going to go into too much details now, but you do have to go to the FIEC or FDIC, one of those sites to get a API key. But it's pretty easy to get. So again, thank you all for joining us this evening. I hope this was educational and entertaining at the same time. And as always, have a good evening and go out and do some good deeds. Good night, everybody.